Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm honestly so incredibly excited to share this one with you because we're looking at a truly visionary, systemic solution for urban greening. You know, we've all seen those evening news broadcasts, right? The massive tree planting drives in our cities. Millions of saplings going into the ground, a ton of fanfare, shovels flashing, everybody smiling for the cameras. But, well, what they definitely don't tell you on the evening news is just how many of those trees actually survived their first year. So today, we're going to explore a completely new framework that completely changes how we think about nature, education, and our civic duty. It's called the alumni canopy.
I want you to imagine something for a second. What if every university student didn't just graduate with a piece of paper in their hand? What if you didn't just walk off that stage, grab your certificate, snap a few photos, and head out of town? Imagine if, instead, you left behind something living in your city. Not just a fleeting memory, but a literal, physical tree. A tree that you help plant, that you help fund, and that you continuously care for. So that, when you visit your college town 10 years down the road, you can actually sit under its shade. Throughout this explainer, we're going to see exactly how this simple yet profoundly powerful idea can completely transform and greenify our cities.
Section 1. The Urban Greening Failure. Why planted trees don't survive.
Okay, let's dive into this by taking a real, hard look at our current system, and maybe dismantling a bit of a feel-good illusion along the way. We see cities planting trees everywhere. Politicians do it, corporations do it for good PR, citizen groups do it, the politician gets a nice photo in the local paper, the sapling goes into the dirt, everyone cheers. And then, absolutely nothing. Because right now, all the focus, all the money, and all the attention is heavily weighted on the planting effort itself. But here's the thing. The real failure isn't in putting roots in the dirt. It's in the maintenance continuity. Those poor saplings are just slowly forgotten. They get no regular watering, no actual care, and there is zero accountability to make sure they actually thrive. Within months, the harsh urban environment takes its toll, the soil completely dries out, and they just die. We aren't failing to put trees in the ground. We are failing to keep them alive.
Section 2. The Alumni Canopy Solution. A new paradigm for urban nature.
So, let's look at how we pivot away from that completely broken model. The absolute core of the alumni canopy is this concept of long-term civic ownership of nature. Picture a system where every university alumnus who wants to give back to society adopts just one sapling in their city. But listen, this is not just some generic charity donation where you write a blank check, pat yourself on the back, and walk away. No, you adopt it, you plant it, you name it. Maybe you name it after a favorite professor, or a lifelong friend you met in the dorms, or even your entire graduating class. And most importantly, you maintain it, both financially and emotionally. This shifts urban greening from this anonymous, kind of sterile civic tax deduction into a deeply personal relationship. That tree actually belongs to someone.
Section 3. How the system works. The operational pillars of the canopy.
Let's break down the mechanics here to prove this isn't just more corporate greenwashing. It's a rigid, highly functional system built on 3 core steps. Step 1. It starts with the city council. They have to actually map out exactly where trees are needed and, crucially, where they can thrive. They make sure trees aren't haphazardly planted over water mains or in spots where they're just going to get torn up next year for a sidewalk expansion, They choose the specific civic spaces, roads, parks, medians, and match them with the correct native species for those local conditions. Then, in Step 2, the local horticulture department takes over the physical execution and the long-term maintenance. And finally, Step 3, the university alumni step in to sponsor and act as caretakers. Let's actually look a bit closer at those last 2 steps, because honestly, that is where the real magic happens.
The horticulture department becomes the absolute physical backbone of this entire system. Because let's be real, we aren't asking software engineers or accountants to grab shovels and prune branches every weekend. The experts do what they do best. The department selects the saplings, ensures they're planted properly according to civic codes, and physically maintains them over time. And this is crucial. If a sapling does fail, because hey, sometimes nature just happens, they are entirely responsible for replacing it. To keep all of this highly organized, they manage a centralized tree registry system. You can kind of think of this database as the central nervous system of the entire project. It's the bridge between that soil in the ground and the sponsor sitting at home.
And here is where the alumni come into play. Any student passing out of the university can participate. They sponsor a sapling in their name and commit to a small, totally manageable monthly contribution. We're talking about the cost of 1 cup of coffee, or maybe a basic streaming subscription. By doing this, they become a permanent foster caretaker. Just think about what this does for a second. It permanently removes the anonymity of the city tree. When a tree has a name and a dedicated sponsor financially backing it, it's not just invisible city property anymore. It becomes a fostered, cared-for piece of nature.
Section 4. The accountability layer. Financing and tracking survival.
Let's talk about financing, because this is really the proof of concept.
This is where the money meets the tech to create an entirely self-sustaining model. The monthly funds from the alumni are not just thrown into some massive faceless government tax pool. Usually, city budgets totally fail our green spaces because general funds so easily get diverted to, say, patch potholes or handle other random civic emergencies. But in this model, the money is deposited into a dedicated account managed by the Horticulture Department exclusively for that specific purpose. This money is completely ring-fenced. It pays exclusively for watering, maintenance, physical protection, soil care, and any necessary replacement. Because of this strict financial structure, every single tree is practically guaranteed financial survival.
But you might be wondering, how do you actually know your money is being used to keep your specific tree alive? Well, digital monitoring. Each tree gets a unique tree ID. The Horticulture Department is quite literally required to snap weekly images of the tree and upload them to a public portal. Imagine moving entirely across the country for a new job, but being able to just pull up a portal on your phone and visually verify that the tree you planted in your college town is currently 10 feet tall and absolutely thriving. You can clearly see the pruning and the maintenance being done in real time. Transparency isn't just an afterthought here. Transparency becomes the very backbone of the tree's survival.
Section 5. Solving 3 critical failures. Why this model succeeds.
Let's see how all of this builds into a perfect summary of why this framework resolves the massive systemic failures of the past. The sheer beauty of the alumni canopy is that it brilliantly solves the 3 biggest hurdles to urban greening, all at the exact same time. First, it solves the lack of maintenance funding by securing continuous, dedicated financial support directly from the alumni, keeping that tree protected from unpredictable city budget cuts. Second, it solves the lack of accountability because that visible, online tracking forces the local departments to actually do their jobs and show their work to the public. And third, it solves the lack of emotional ownership. By giving the tree a name and a specific caretaker, it creates a permanent human link. Students don't just leave their university anymore. They leave behind a continuously growing part of the city.
Section 6. Growing a civic legacy. The long-term impact on our cities. Let's zoom out for a minute and look at the long-term visionary impact this system has on our cities. Fast forward 10, 20, or even 50 years into the future using this model. Over time, because thousands of graduates are leaving the university every single year, you aren't just planting isolated little trees. These individual actions compound over decades. Thousands of graduates literally mean thousands of new, permanently funded trees annually. You are creating entire city corridors, massive green zones, all entirely maintained by the alumni of local universities. This creates wildlife corridors, actively lowers urban temperatures, and quite literally changes the skyline of the city. It creates a living, breathing map of civic responsibility. Cities stop being these harsh concrete places where trees are just planted for a quick photo op and left to die. Instead, they transition into thriving ecosystems that are genuinely taken care of by the very people who learned there.
Ultimately, it poses a deeply inspiring question. What if graduation wasn't just an exit from your education, but your very first real entry into civic responsibility? One alumnus, one tree, one city that becomes permanently, sustainably greener. The future of a city is not built in concrete, it grows. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found this structural shift in urban greening as fascinating as I do, and I hope it leaves you thinking about the living legacy you want to plant in your own city.